Hello, we are Studio Duat. We are a team of 5 artists and 2 programmers, and our primary deliverables for the semester are a production based upon the Egyptian afterlife and a pre-production package for next semester's studio. Our faculty advisors are Ruth Comley, Thomas Corbett, and John Dessler. Our pre-production package is based off of the legend of Cyrena of Guam, the world's first mermaid. We chose this package because it presents a lot of interesting challenges, which makes it a flexible package that we can develop according to, and that can be adapted to the needs and strengths of the next team. These challenges include a transforming humanoid character, 2 separate above water and underwater environments, as well as hair and water simulation. We're working with an outsourced writer to make sure that we nail down these story beats before we develop any assisting resources, such as the storyboard, VFX documentation, and the preliminary art, so that we can make sure that all decisions made in the production of these things are all in support of the story. Our actual production this semester is an experience of the Egyptian afterlife, which is traditionally an experience of a deceased soul who travels through many different worlds, meeting many different creatures, and overcoming trials before arriving at the final stage to be judged by Anubis. In the stage, they have their heart weighed on a scale against the feather of truth. We've simplified this experience into 4 separate environments for the guests to experience. They originally come out in the tomb, accompanied by 2 companion spirits, one arrogant and one humble. They are all summoned by Anubis to come on this journey through the land of night and through the land of day before reuniting with Anubis in the judgment chamber, in which all of their hearts will be judged, including the guests. This story went through a lot of iterations. The original myth tells the story from the 3rd-person perspective and is a guided, narrated journey. The pre-production package reimagined this as a 1st-person perspective, but we've chosen to, given the strengths of our team, we've chosen to tell the story from the emotional perspective rather than making it a narrated journey. The reason we deviated from the pre-production package in this way is because the package we received was very tech-focused, but we have 5 artists on our team, so we wanted to challenge ourselves to tell the story in a more emotional way through the art of the environment. The platforms we're using to tell this story, as dictated by the pre-production package, are the Cave, which is a 3-wall projection experience, and Oculus, which is in virtual reality. And now I'll turn this over to Sharon and Tim to talk about our environmental design process.
As for environment design, we realized that in order to establish the power for judgment moment and make our guests have their own reflections, we really need to create distinct emotion for each environment to build up the final crucial moment. And we're going to specify more soon in this presentation.
So our production pipeline for our team is first foremost parallel development of our prototype. We iterate on this a lot, and then in the later stages, while we're refining our work, we'll also be working on the pre-production for the next semester.
Talking about specific scene, the first one is the tomb, which we wanted to create the emotion of anxiety and make our guests understand they're in the afterworld. We borrowed some ideas from stage setting to create the opening scene in a more dramatic way and also make the layout more reasonable.
So in this scene, we decided to create 3 different dioramas. One for the guest, one for the poor character, and one for the rich character. The purpose of this was to establish the roles of each of the characters in the scene, and also to inform the guests that their character is dead.
Moving to next environment, Land of Night. This is where the real boat journey starts at. We want our guests to feel discomfort and fail. We hope to take advantage of dark, sharp, narrow, and cold colors to build this out.
In our scene, we used a cavern with a low-hanging ceiling and sharp jutted rocks pointed towards the guest. We did this in order to make the space feel tight and increase the feeling of claustrophobia. And we also used a winding path to obscure the destination of the guest in this scene. And this was to increase the feeling of anxiety from not knowing where you're going.
The next environment is Land of Day. Based on original myths, this is where gods and old heroes live. It is supposed to be a peaceful and serene region. We referred to the landscape of Nile River in Egypt to help us figure out what kind of elements should be included in the Egyptian paradise. Also, with the warm sunset color, we hope to strengthen the relaxing and comfortable feeling in this region.
In addition to that, we use a straight path in this scene with a central point of focus, and this was to counteract the feeling of anxiety that we were going for in the previous world.
So after going through the two very different regions, the journey will finally end up into Judgment Chamber, where most of the story happened here. So it is very important for us to create the awe and respectful feeling in this environment. Besides, we wanted to make the judgment moment more powerful. So hopefully we wanted to use lighting and VFX to differentiate the two atmospheres of being judged bad or good, which one will be more like in Land of Night to make you feel you're being in hell, whereas the other will be more like Land of Day to make you feel you're being in heaven.
So in order to capture the feeling of awe and respect in this scene, we decided it was best to make the guests feel small. So in order to do this, we made all the objects in this scene extremely large, and then we also used leading lines to direct the gaze of the guest towards the scale at the center of the judgment chamber, where the guest will be judged at the end of the experience. So now Ty will come on and talk about texturing.
To achieve high fidelity and more realistic looking for our art asset, we also emphasize on the creation of texture in our asset pipeline. Since we're using real-time rendering and we have a lot of large-scale environment assets such as terrain and also natural surfaces, first of all, we designed to use PBR texture created by Substance Designer for the texture purpose for this project. Before we go into making the base material, we first gather reference photos according to our mood board and style guide, such as the sand pattern in the Egyptian desert as our reference for the desert in the judgment chamber, and also the wet mud in cave as our reference for the ground in the Land of Night. And then we go into the creation of the base material with various attempts and continuous reiteration. Here is a sample of the progress. And here is a sample of the finished base material. Right now, we're trying to apply the base material to a large surface in the project as much as possible. Our following step will be applying this material to the environment models more procedurally and more detailedly by breaking large surface into small parts and apply seamless texture to them procedurally to maintain the continuity and also maintain a high resolution. Well, we'll also use the variation in terms of dirt, ground, and layer models to break the repetitiveness and the procedural general feelingness. Now I'll pass the time to Sahar to talk about character.
For the character art pipeline, Anubis was primarily our main focus. He is the Egyptian god of embalming and the dead. In our experience, Anubis places the guest's heart on a scale in order to determine their fate. After doing research of his backstory, we drafted a concept of what we believed Anubis should look like, demonstrating an archetype of being a divine and regal being rather than demonstrating and personifying negative characteristics. Several low poly sculpts and passes were done to get a feel of what this character should look like. After gaining understanding of his underlying structures and doing research of both human and canine anatomy, Anubis was sculpted in ZBrush while maintaining proper topology. Finally, after the model concept and sculpt was done, Anubis was retopologized and rigged in order to keep in mind implementation controls that would be necessary for animation, such as the utilization of blend shapes and driven presets. Additionally, we have included 2 human figures that will ultimately be judged at the end of our experience that are representative of both arrogant and humble traits. These characters were rigged, and a cloth rig script was created to allow the cloth to deform around the rig of these characters as they're moved for animation. Finally, we also included several creatures to our environments to enrich our experience and bring them to life. These creatures include the sacred ibis as well as the Egyptian cobra, which are very venerated and symbolic in ancient Egyptian culture. All rigs were created in support and were directly in communication for animation to address their needs. Now here's Guang Hao to talk about tools.
For our programmers, we make some tools to improve our production efficiency. One of our tasks is to move the camera through world to guide our guests. Instead of letting our artists to write code to control the path, we make tools to allow our artists to simply drag and drop waypoints in the editor. If they want to adjust the curve based on the landscape, they can easily use the two handles to do that. Besides the tools in Unity, we also have tools in Maya that randomize the transforms of rock models. Besides, we also have an audio module to easily load and manage our audio source. Our scenes varies from dark cave to the holy temple, so that requires us to have different visual effects to illustrate them. The effects we use a lot are cloud and fog. Instead of drawing texture directly onto the surface or use the particle system, which costs us a lot, we simply use we eventually use volumetric rendering to simulate the propagation of light rays, and that gives us a stunning and sophisticated result. And Patrick is going to talk more about the visual effects.
Lighting is a very important part of our project because it creates atmosphere and emotional effects, and it reinforces the three-dimensional feel to the scene, which convinces the audience that the story and the world is believable. We also use lighting to indirectly control the audience attention. After the environmental art and texture settle down, we will use lighting as a key to making sure that the three distinct environments feel like they are part of one cohesive experience. Now moving on to the optimization. Since we are using real-time rendering for two platforms, so optimization is very important. In order to improve the performance, we did a lot of research and we took different approaches, and it turned out to be a collaborative effort for both programmers and artists. We make it a solid optimization guideline for ourselves in order to keep up the good performance, and also we documented it to deliver as a pre-production package to the future team. Now Yuna is going to talk about our future schedule.
So we've divided up the rest of the semester so that we're able to deliver what we want to by the time softs come around, and that leaves us enough time to also make sure that we have the proper documentation and QA for our experience. And so in summary, we're Studio Duat. We're presenting a pre-production package based off of a mermaid story for the next semester, and we are creating a production based off of the Egyptian afterlife for this semester. Thank you, and we'll now be taking questions.
So is it the same journey then through Oculus and the cave through your final journey? Same thing, you're seeing the same thing?
So the question is the experience through both platforms the same story? And yes, they are the same story and can be experienced independently of each other.
And how long are they?
It's about a 6-minute experience. Yes.
You said that you had used an outside writer for, I forget which one of these?
For our pre-production package.
Right. So how did you find that person and how's that working out?
We are connected through a writer through John Dessler's class. So we're working with her over email, and we're going to be setting up a time for her to come in person this week so that we can directly discuss the story needs.
So Anubis, you only see that character at the end for the final judgment, correct? Or have you seen before that?
So the question is, are we seeing Anubis at only the end? And the answer is no, you're also seeing him in the beginning of the tomb where he is summoning the spirits to all come on this journey. Yes?
When you were talking about lighting, were you talking about the art direction of the lighting or the technical challenge of lighting?
So the question is, when we were discussing lighting, are we talking about the art or the technical challenges of the lighting? And The answer to that is that it's both. We're taking into account the technical challenges of the lighting, but the technical challenges are in service of making sure that our story and the art is all supported in the end. Yes.
Just a personal curiosity as to why did your team decide to go with an external writer?
So the question is, why did we decide to go with an external writer? And it's because on our team, we have no people who are dedicated writers on our team. Yes.
So the 4 scenes of your story, which did you find the most challenging and why?
So the question is, which scene did we find the most challenging? And I will turn that to our environment director.
So deciding which one is the most challenging is actually in itself a difficult question to answer. We try to put as much care into each individual scene, so we're not prioritizing one scene over the other. I hope that answered your question.
Can I add something to the question? Like, for example, for the judgment chamber on the platform that you're being judged, you're seeing a lot of rocks beneath you. They are very large scale, but the texture are very detailed. So how to ensure that large texture or have high resolution is the challenge we ran into in the judgment chamber. However, when we're doing the Land of the Day, we also ran into a challenge of how to do PBR texture for plants and vegetation. Then when we're doing the Land of Night, we run into problem with how to do like without the lighting. So I think each environment has its unique challenge and we're tackling equally.
Time for one more. So you guys mentioned at the end that the guest is being judged, but how are they being judged if there's no interaction?
So at the end of the experience, the guest's heart is put on the scale, but you don't actually see the result of what happens at the end. So we cut to black before that.